Guys, welcome to the channel. Why are black people in America the poorest people in America? Right. And here is how we can actually change it. So, I've got a number of comments and questions lately in DMs asking me this question about why black people are the poorest. And I figured, this is a channel that's about money. So, let's address it right here on the channel. Let's do a video about it. This channel is all about financial education, financial freedom, and helping, all people get better with their money in the real estate. So, what's a better place to talk about that than right here on the channel and do a video? So in this video, I'm going to talk about why black people in America are behind financially. But please, please, please do me a favor, stay tuned because I want to tell you what we can actually do about it right now. So I don't just want to talk about why we're behind, but I want to give you some solutions, right? Things that we can do. So I'm a black man and I feel it's important to address this topic on this channel. Now, there is financial inequality in our country, and I think this is a good place to talk about it. So let's jump into it, guys. Slavery happened from 1619 to 1865. It was illegal for black people to own property, and it was illegal for black people to be paid. Although you had some slaves that were, paid a stipend, 99.9% of all slaves weren't paid wages, right? Like they should have been. And so that's almost 250 years of a system, a built-in system that was specifically designed to keep money out of black people's hands and to keep black people as the main producers to enrich somebody else, the larger majority, right? The whole point of slavery was to enrich people that were not black. So 250 years of being a part of a cog in the system is a very, very, very long time, right? Of not being able to build your own wealth, of not being able to pass down your own wealth to the next generation, not being able to pass down farmland, not being able to pass down certain things that 100 years from now would have built up some wealth for people that in your family. That's a very long time. That's like 250 years of slavery, of legal slavery, is like the year 1753 to the year 2023. That's how long slavery was legal in America, right? That's a long time. So let's not just downplay slavery because a lot of people want to skip right through it when they're thinking about why black people in America are the poorest people. They don't even want to really address 250 years of legalized slavery. Okay. So after slavery, then you had the end of the Civil War in 1865, and you had a period was become known in history as Reconstruction. And during the period of Reconstruction, which was about a 9 or 10 year period right after 1865, where blacks were given rights, right? The books changed, the legal, all the laws, not a lot of the laws changed, and blacks now had the right, the opportunity to own land, the opportunity to get educated legally, the opportunity to make wages and make better wages, not on par with their counterparts, but still a little bit better, obviously, than they were paid as slaves. And so blacks took advantage of this time frame and they built, created, produced. That was a very important point in the history of the country called Reconstruction. Now, towards the end of that 10-year period is when you had, you know, scare tactics going on to put black people back in their place, so to speak, right? You had fear that was being produced, created, and you had people getting killed. You had things getting burned down. All this happened, and it sort of ended Reconstruction. Then you had Jim Crow laws that crept in. Jim Crow laws were basically slave codes and laws that were legalized ways to restrict and limit what blacks could do, what blacks couldn't do, what blacks could own, what blacks couldn't own, and their financial situation took a hit. Jim Crow was basically slavery all over again. It affected black people's ability to earn wages and to earn higher wages, right? Or to get into fields that produced higher wages. So Jim Crow also set up racism in all types of areas, not just money, so to speak, but it all kind of led back to money in terms of jobs and labor and healthcare and housing and education. So Jim Crow was slavery by a different name. It was there to keep black people powerless. It was laws on the books, right, after slavery to keep black people, that kept black people poor and with no capital. right? And ultimately to keep the control of resources and money and wealth in the country out of the hands of black people and in the hands of the majority, right? Jim Crow was devastating from a financial standpoint for black Americans, and that lasted another 90 or 100 years, the early 1870s up until the late 19 or mid 1960s. You had Jim Crow laws on the books in every state. Then you had redlining. Redlining was where blacks were subject to only specific areas where they could live or they could buy property, right? Banks and financial lenders, institutions, they would pick and choose who they would lend money to. And oftentimes they would not lend money to black Americans, especially in certain areas that were redlined on the map. They eliminated blacks from moving into certain neighborhoods and made it impossible to get those loans for those homes. So redlining was huge, right? Not to mention black properties were valued lower, but blacks were unable to build wealth through home ownership. And we talk in 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. And also, you had restrictive covenants. Now, restrictive covenants were set up in many neighborhoods in larger cities where their homeowner association, they were codes that kept blacks out of certain neighborhoods, right? So you had redlining and you had restrictive covenants going on at the same time, right? So those things didn't end until the 1960s. Some restrictive covenants didn't end until the 80s and 90s, right? So you had, then after that, you had mass incarceration where blacks were unfairly given harsher sentences and penalties. And these were the fathers and breadwinners. So you're saying, what is mass incarceration? Mass incarceration has to have to do with finances. Well, when you unfairly sentence men, typically more so because men were more the perpetrators of crimes, when you had men who were sentenced more harshly than other men that weren't black to the same crimes, same, you were taking some of the breadwinners and fathers out of the family. That's money, right? So, guys, I say all that to say this: there's a history to why black Americans, black people in America are the poorest people in America. There's a long history that is intertwined and wrapped up in racism, right? All these things are meshed together that have put black people behind financially. It's a history. Now, that's just the facts. I gave you a real brief rundown of the facts. Those weren't necessarily my opinions. Now, the rest of this video is going to be kind of my opinions, right? So I just don't want us to ignore the history that has made it possible for blacks to be in the situation they are financially, right? The 350 to 400 years of issues that caused it. All those things affected black people. And I don't want to downplay it, right? Now, I'm no expert, but again, the rest of this is going to be my opinion in things that I think we should do and can do. But I do want to say this, guys: the ultra rich are making sure they widen the wealth gap and continue to widen it. And a lot of people, a lot of us are going to be left behind, way, way behind, more so than ever before if we don't start to think differently and do some things differently. If you thought 1619 to 1980 was bad, wait till you see 2050 to 2350. Okay. Now, just a couple of things to think about, guys. Black families right now today have 25 cents for every dollar of wealth that white families have. That's the wealth gap. The median wealth gap between white and black families has pretty much stayed the same over the last 20 years. The median white Americans in their early 30s, in their early 30s had $29,000 more wealth than the median black American families in their early 30s. So by the time black families get to be their early 30s, they already have $29,000 less, right? The racial wealth gap is even more when you get to late 50s. The average, or I say average, the median white American family in their late 50s had $250,000 more wealth than the median black American family in their late 50s. So as you go along from your 30s to your 50s, it just widens and widens and widens. And there's some things we can be doing right now to change that. Okay. So We know the history. I just kind of went over the history for you guys real quick. It's caused many of these problems that put black people behind financially. Of course, home equity. Blacks own less homes, and home ownership has been one of the biggest ways people have built wealth in America, right? And so, that's one area that we've kind of missed out on, right? And so, ownership of assets is another area where Black Americans have missed out on because of the history, right? We own less stuff and we have higher debts. One study showed that student loan debt was 30% higher in Black households than in their counterparts' household, right? So we own less stuff, we own less houses, we have higher debt, and then we make less money. Black people in America make less money for the same jobs with the same education. Blacks make 80% on average, 80 cent to every $1 that whites earn. And that gap gets even greater when you talk about, black women compared to white men, right? It's these things are built into the system, right? And it's built into the minds and perceptions. Um, it's just, when I say built into the system, guys, I'm saying it's a nice way of saying racism still exists to this day in every single industry in America. And what happens is that too affects why are black people in America still the poorest people. I want us to understand these facts, right? These things are happening even today around us. But here's what I want us to do, because I want to get to the part of this video we talk about how can we change this, right? How can we make changes? Number one is, or I said not number one, but first is don't wait on the system to change this gap or for someone else to change your personal financial situation, right? We have to begin to take complete control and ownership over the problem and what we can do. There's that word again, ownership. I keep bringing that up, right? Some of the wealth gap, not some, most of the wealth gap is systemic and comes from history. And we're not going to be able to change the whole wealth gap for all Black Americans today, in 5 years, in 20 years. But what we can begin to think about and do is change our own personal family situation. Now, that is in our control right now. We can't change the history. We can't change the systems that set up right now, but we can change what we do, right? That's in our control right now. We have opportunities available to us right now that weren't available to our grandparents and sometimes to our parents and to our great grandparents. They didn't have the same opportunities we have today, right? The game is a little different. But I want you to understand that the game is about to be played by the haves and have nots in the next 50 years, next 100 years, right? The world we're living in will begin to divide even more and separate even more from rich and poor. And you don't want to be on the side of poor. So that's why I'm saying right now, there's things that we can do. And let's talk about them, right? In terms of ownership, in terms of resources, right? In terms of access to capital or even having capital, right? The first thing we can do is stop consuming all the time. Stop being major consumers and consumption. We need to concentrate on being the boss, being the owner, being the producer, being the distributor, the one who controls and owns distribution, the one who controls and owns manufacturing, the one who controls and owns the equipment, the up-to-date equipment, and owns the warehouses for storage, right? And we need to concentrate on being the ones that own the land, which we're building the plant and the manufacturing facilities. I'm just giving you an example, but ownership, own the labor instead of just being the laborers. Ownership is key. When you own it, you don't have to be worried about whether or not somebody likes you, or whether or not somebody's paying you a fair wage, or whether or not somebody is going to accept you on an interview, right? When you own it, you can help and you can serve and you can give back and provide for and you can help others, but you don't want to own just for the sake of owning. You want to control who gets what, how much you get, when they get it, and from what source they get it. Be in control, the owner. We simply, right now, Black people in America simply don't own enough appreciating assets. right? Assets going up in value. Yeah, we got a lot of ownership in our cars and things like that, but not where we want to be in terms of homes and real estate and commercial real estate and land and manufacturing and equipment. Like I said earlier, heavy machinery, right? Distribution channels, right? Large businesses that employ lots of people. Those are the type of appreciating assets that we need to be comfortable with, right? We need to work towards ownership. We have to own the capital, right? So we don't continue to be the capital that is owned in terms of labor, right? We want to own the capital. Very important. The second thing that we can do is start being intentional and fantastic managers and stewards over the money we have, right? Contribute to building wealth for a retirement fund. Contribute to a 401k, contribute to a Roth IRA, fully contribute as much as possible, right? Manage your money well in your own home. That means being intentional about your money, intentional about what your expenses are, intentional about doing a budget, intentional about saving money for an emergency fund. So you have 10 grand, you have 40 grand laying around if something goes wrong. You don't have to patronize the loan the payday loan stores down the street in the strip mall. You don't have to do that, right? Have some emergency money. If do your best to save up some money in case something goes wrong. Do your part to be intentional with money and not wasteful with money, right? Now, the third thing we can do is cut the umbilical cord of entertainment. Cut the addiction to spending so much time and money on entertainment. Now, when I say cut the fascination and infatuation with entertainers and entertainment and all that, and the party and the club and the worshiping of celebrities and all that type of stuff, I'm not saying don't do anything, don't have fun. That's not what I'm saying at all. But if too much infatuation with the flossing and the Gucci and the stuff and the materialism, the name brand, too much infatuation with that stuff is what is going to continue to keep us in last place. That type of stuff will continue to keep us always trying to catch up. We know the history. We just talked about the history. But I'm saying moving forward, we don't want to be so infatuated with the entertainment, right? Because that causes us to spend money. That causes us to utilize resources that could be going towards someplace else that might help our wealth down the road. And I know it's a distraction. You want to have fun and you want to take vacations and all that. That stuff is good. Nothing wrong with doing that stuff, right? But sometimes for some of us, it gets some of us off focus, right? Now if you can do it all, right? But for a lot of people, they're trying to do the entertainment thing and they don't have some of the other stuff taken care of. They're not building anything, right? So some of you may be saying, hey, I don't care about 50 years down the road. I don't care about it at all. I'm not going to be here, and that's cool, if that's how you believe. If you want to and choose to leave your grandchildren 50 years from now, or your great grandchildren 50 years from now, if you want to leave them in the same financial situation you was in when you came into the world in 1970 or 1980 or 1990, you came in the world with nothing because of all the history I just laid out. You came in the world with nothing. If you want to leave that to your great grandkids in 75 years or 50 years, that's on you, right? It's your choice. Now, most people I know, they don't choose to do that. We want to progress as a human, as people. We want to go forward. And the way to go forward is to take the opportunities that are available to us right now and do something different so that down the road they're not going to be in the same situation we were in when we were born in 1960 or 1980 or 2000. Right now, number four, the fourth thing we can do is support other Black owned businesses that are trying to get a footing and trying to build and trying hard to come out of the cycle of poverty that the history has helped put them in, who are trying to own a business, to own capital, to own labor, right? Some of this money that we spend and consume needs to be consumed at Black businesses, me included, right? I got to do better myself at supporting black businesses, right? I have to do better at that. But we all should concentrate on that. It's very, very important to help them along. Okay. So the fifth thing that we can do is make sure we're active in the stock market. Make sure we're active in buying mutual funds and index funds and getting the match plus putting more into our 401k and the Roth IRA and the other stocks and the options trade, whatever we want to do in the stock market. Be in the stock market, be in the real estate market, right? Get you some appreciating assets going up in value. Get you some of those. That's the fifth thing that we can do. Let me just go back over those. Number one was concentrate on ownership and being the boss, right? Number two was be intentional and solid with your money and being a solid manager over the money that you currently have. Number three was consume less, produce more. Be conscious about our spending. Number four was support Black owned businesses, right? Given the history, that's something that we all should be making an effort to do. And finally, number five was continue or at least start to be active in the stock market, active in buying real estate, active in accumulating, appreciating assets. Because before you can pass something down to future generations, you got to have something, right? Again, guys, this video is not about dividing one group of people against another group of people. This video is not about blaming one side or blaming another side. It's not about blame. It's not about division. It's about educating ourselves about the history, about why Black people in America are the poorest people in America. And it's also about how can we change that? How can we turn it around? How can we make some changes today because of the newfound opportunities? How can we take some of those opportunities and get better? Now, listen, if you got anything at all out of this quick video, I guess it wasn't a quick video, but if you got anything out of this video, do me a favor, smash the like button and check out a few more videos I'm going to put right above here, guys. Listen, thank you so much for staying with me on this video. I hope I was able to address the question of why are Black people in America the poorest people and how can we actually change it? Hey, the best person that's going to take care of the old you is the young you. Guys, do me a favor, take care of yourself, but always take care of other people as well. Until the next video, peace.